They weren't trying to stand out. They were trying to function as one. Columbia Records didn't need convincing. They knew exactly who they were signing. Toto's self-titled debut album in 1978 was an immediate success. Hold the Line climbed the charts. Georgie Porgy showcased their sophistication. Audiences responded instantly. Critics didn't. Toto was accused of being too polished, too calculated, too professional. At a time when punk and new wave celebrated rawness and rebellion, Toto represented discipline and craftsmanship. What should have been their greatest strength became the reason they were dismissed. Their next two albums sold modestly, but not enough to satisfy expectations. Behind the scenes, pressure mounted. The message from the label became clear. One more album. Make it work or walk away. Under that weight, Toto created Toto 4. Released in 1982, it was meticulous, ambitious, and emotionally layered. Rosanna, I Won't Hold You Back, and a song almost no one believed in at the time. Africa. Inspired by David Page's childhood memories of missionary teachers and a late-night documentary, Africa was sincere, earnest, and completely unfashionable. It wasn't ironic. It wasn't edgy. It didn't try to impress. Even the band doubted it. Yet Africa climbed quietly, steadily, until it reached #1, their only #1 hit. At the 1983 Grammy Awards, Toto won 6 awards, including Album and Record of the Year. They had reached the peak, and still, they were never fully embraced. Toto didn't begin as a group of hopeful teenagers chasing a record deal. Their story starts somewhere far more controlled inside the most elite recording studios of Los Angeles in the late 1970s. Places where mistakes weren't forgiven and perfection wasn't admired, it was required. Keyboardist David Page and drummer Jeff Porcaro had known each other since high school. Both grew up surrounded by music, but not casually. Their fathers were respected professionals in the industry. David's father, Marty Page, was a legendary arranger. Jeff's father, Joe Porcaro, was one of the most sought-after percussion teachers in the country. Music wasn't a dream for them. It was an expectation. By their early 20s, David and Jeff were already everywhere. Their names didn't appear on album covers, but their playing was unmistakable. They were part of a loose collective later dubbed the A-Team, a small group of elite session musicians trusted by artists like Steely Dan, Boz Scaggs, Elton John, and Barbra Streisand. They weren't chasing the spotlight. They were building the sound behind it. Night after night, session after session, they learned discipline, precision, restraint, how to serve a song instead of overpowering it. That mindset would become Toto's signature and later, their curse. While touring with Boz Scaggs, an idea slowly formed. What if all these musicians who spent their lives supporting others created something of their own? Jeff's younger brother Steve Porcaro joined on keyboards, bringing a more experimental, atmospheric edge. Guitarist Steve Lukather followed, another studio prodigy whose versatility made him indispensable. Bassist David Hungate and vocalist Bobby Kimball completed the original lineup. They were overqualified, hyper-prepared, and quietly playful in a way that didn't quite fit the era. Even the band's name reflected that looseness. Toto meant different things to different members. A placeholder, a joke, a Latin word meaning whole. Some bands don't just make music, they quietly become part of people's lives. Their songs drift through car speakers on long drives, hum in the background of kitchens, echo late at night when no one is watching. They attach themselves to moments we don't yet know will matter until years later, when a melody suddenly brings everything back. Toto was one of those bands. Known for precision, musicianship, and songs that felt almost impossibly polished, they were often misunderstood. Loved by audiences, dismissed by critics, and eventually reduced to a single song they nearly left behind. But the story of Toto isn't really about perfection, and it isn't about decline. It's about what happens after success, when the spotlight fades, when family ties are tested, and when carrying on becomes an act of devotion rather than ambition. At the center of this story is not just a band, but a family. 3 brothers, shaped by music, bound by expectation, and changed forever by loss. This is not the story of how Toto rose. It's the story of what remained. Success didn't bring peace. It brought pressure. The expectations were relentless. The touring schedules are brutal. And the standards Toto held themselves to, once a source of pride, became exhausting. The 1980s music industry thrived on excess, and Toto wasn't immune. Substance use crept in. Fatigue followed. Vocalist Bobby Kimball struggled to maintain consistency, and his performances began to suffer. In 1984, the band made a painful decision and parted ways with him. What followed was instability. Vocalists rotated through the lineup. Each brought talent. Each brought promise. But none restored the sense of balance Toto once had. The very precision that defined the band made it difficult to adapt. At the center of everything was Jeff Porcaro. Not just the drummer, but the emotional anchor. The quiet leader. The one who held the weight when others couldn't. On August 5, 1992, Jeff Porcaro died suddenly at just 38 years old. The details were disputed, debated, never fully agreed upon. But for those who loved him, the specifics didn't matter. The heart of the band was gone. Many believed Toto should end there. In some ways, it already had. Toto continued not out of ambition, but responsibility. Steve Lukather stepped into a more visible leadership role, a position he never sought but couldn't avoid. Simon Phillips took on the impossible task of replacing Jeff behind the drums, not by imitation, but by respect. The years that followed were quieter, less commercial, more fragile. Then, in 2007, tragedy returned. Bassist Mike Porcaro, another of Jeff's brothers, was diagnosed with ALS, a devastating disease that slowly strips the body of movement while leaving the mind intact. By 2008, Steve Lukather announced the band's end. He was exhausted, grieving, emotionally unraveling. It felt final. But in 2010, Toto reunited for one reason only: to help Mike. They toured not for charts or relevance, but for care, for medical support, for dignity. Loss continued. Illness followed. And in 2015, Mike Porcaro passed away. Yet something unexpected was happening. While Toto endured its hardest years, Africa found new life. Online, shared, rediscovered. A generation too young to remember its release embraced it, not ironically, but sincerely. The song critics once mocked became a cultural touchstone. A reminder that music doesn't belong to eras, publications, or opinions. It belongs to people. Suddenly, Toto wasn't a punchline. They were a memory, a comfort, a constant, and maybe they always had been. Toto was never just the band behind Africa. They were builders, craftsmen, brothers. They survived dismissal, loss, and grief. They carried on when stopping would have been easier. And they left behind something stronger than approval. The spotlight always moves on. What matters is what remains when it does. And in Toto's case, what remains is music that outlived criticism and a legacy built not on perfection, but persistence.